What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to have a little bit of fun here with a 2024 NFL mock draft. We are through a month of the football season. We're starting to get an idea of what teams suck, what teams are going to be pretty good, what teams' needs are going to be. And obviously a lot is going to change. It's just more so just football talk. And honestly, the reason why I want to do it is because we have a big update coming today to Madden 24 to the draft class. That's going to fix a lot of the draft class issues. So myself and Bengal are making 2024 and 2025 draft classes for Xbox Next Gen. So the fact that I'm just thinking all about drafts, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a mock draft today. And tomorrow, we'll be back with Cardinals franchise. But we're going to have a little bit of fun here. And without further ado, we got the Bears on the clock with first and second picks. If they find a way, with their pick and the Panthers pick, to get 1 and 2, A, it's going to be hilarious. B, it's going to be awesome, but I think, and almost worth it if you are a Bears fan. But we got to just kind of go with the obvious. If this happens, two things are going to happen. One, and he might not even last the season. They're going to get a new head coach. Go offensive head coach. Please, for the love of God, go offensive head coach. Two, if they finish like this, even with the sometimes splash games out of Justin Fields, like we saw last week against the Broncos, they're going to be moving on from Justin Fields. There's just, I don't know what kind of value you could get for Justin Fields right now. I'd like to just be optimistic that some team be willing to pay maybe a second-round pick, or like a third and a fifth, or like you get some conditional picks. But you're not going to be getting a first back in return from Justin Fields. There's just too many question marks. But if you do finish 1 and 2, one of those spots being your own pick, they're going to be moving on, and we're going to have them get Caleb Williams, who is just ridiculous. 2-time Heisman-looking winner right now. Easily the front runner for the Heisman Trophy winner this year. Won it last year. 21 passing touchdowns to 1 interception, plus 4 rushing tutties. He's just ridiculous. He's like one of those players that like you have to just scratch and claw to find anything wrong with his game. The argument right now, the big knock is like he has too much time to throw behind that line at USC, which was a gigantic knock against Zach Wilson coming out of BYU. And obviously we've seen Zach Wilson struggles, but Caleb Williams, the other pros are just, he's ridiculous arm talent, great accuracy, not really a dual threat, but he's definitely an athlete. He can move around if you need him to. And that's just a slam dunk. Absolute slam dunk if you need a quarterback. Caleb Williams is, you know, going back to last, I mean, yeah, I don't want to be Captain Hindsight, but like he probably would have been first last year over Bryce Young. And then you go, like, what was the last quarterback that you would have taken over Caleb Williams? It's been a while. It's been a while to say for sure there's an undisputed. Like, so he's as good as any quarterback prospect we've seen over the last decade or so. Whoever ends up getting the first pick is going to be getting a very good player. And if you're the Bears, you just go all in on the fun time, and you go with the second pick. You bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'3", has 350 yards, 3 touchdowns through 4 games this year. And 2 of those games he's been banged up, not 100% in. Same kind of deal. I don't know who is the last super, like Jamar Chase maybe, in terms of like super hyped college wide receiver prospect that I think I just can't see any way he doesn't pan out, man. Just ridiculous playmaker. And then if you're looking at like this new retooled Bears, you're going to have, maybe you get, the Lions OC, Ben Johnson, come in as your new head coach. So you get an offensive-minded coach. You have Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. Offensive line, you got, Braxton Jones looks solid. Darnell Wright has been one of the highest-graded rookie tackles this year. Tevin Jenkins is solid. Like, that could be a very quick turnaround to having respectable offensive football for the Chicago Bears in this scenario. You just would obviously have to suffer a lot this season and punt on this season and tank for that to happen. Pick 3, we have the Vegas Raiders, and we're going to kind of go template here a little bit. We're going to get Drake May, the quarterback of North Carolina, 6'5", 220, 72% completion percentage, 8 total touchdowns to 4 picks. And I always kind of thought this year was going to be a step down in terms of production for Drake May. Kind of similar to Sam Howell's last year at North Carolina. Sam Howell's second last year. Put up ridiculous numbers because his team was great. But then his final year at North Carolina, a lot of those guys went to the league, and he just didn't have the talent. Drake May last year had some legitimate weapons. Josh Downs was a monster. Antoine Green was a very, very good player. And then this year, you could just see there's not as much talent around him at North Carolina. So you have to kind of go beyond box score scouting. Drake May absolutely passes the eye test. I would say the best dual threat quarterback, Riley Leonard kind of is also a little bit of a dual threat, but I would make the argument that Drake May, in terms of being able to scramble, might be the best in this first round bubble of players. So that is a different type of weapon that the Raiders can use. It seems like you got an unhappy Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. And if you don't trade those guys, you hold on to them for another year, you have to get something better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I would also say, much like the Chicago Bears, if Vegas finishes with the 3rd overall pick, you're likely going to be moving on from Josh McDaniels, which they absolutely should do. Not a good coach. But there's your new franchise quarterback, Drake May. You should be very happy about that. Denver at 4. We're continuing the template. I'm going to get Jared Verse, the pass rusher out of Florida State. Again, not ridiculous numbers this year. Some of these players I'm going to reference, I'm going to be going for it'll be like 17, 18, 19 games. I'm just kind of grouping in what they did last year and what they've done so far this year. Jared Verse, last year and this year, 19.5 TFLs, 9.5 sacks in 16 games, 6'4", 250. Just out of all the pass rushers, he has the highest floor and a very high ceiling as well. So I think he's just a really, really safe pick. And you look at the Denver Broncos offensively this year, even though the Broncos have been pretty bad, I'm pretty sure Russ's numbers are like near top 10 quarterback status, right? So like it's been the defense of the Denver Broncos that's been lacking. I think like just going with the idea of like get the biggest game changer you could land on the defensive side of the ball. And they just released Randy Gregory, who was an expensive pass rusher. I think Jared Verse makes a lot of sense to the Broncos at 4. Minnesota at pick 5. Here we go. Of course, I'm not going to be staying template for this whole time. I got a couple picks that are out there. But at 5, I'm going to have them get Quinn Ewers, the quarterback from Texas. I don't think Minnesota will finish with a top 5 pick. If they do, it's probably because they traded Kirk Cousins ahead of the trade deadline, and they were in the market for a quarterback. Or, even if they ride with Kirk Cousins, he's going to be gone in the offseason, I think. I think this is the final year, no matter what way you cut it, of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. And Quinn Ewers is going to be a quarterback that's going to make Justin Jefferson very, very happy. 6'3", 205, maybe a little light in the ass for an elite quarterback. Could bulk up a little bit, but 66% completion percentage, has 10 touchdowns to 1 pick, 5 total rushing touchdowns. And his game against Alabama, man, I'm buying in the hype, man. Former 5-star recruit, big-time recruit. I believe he was like the number 1 overall player in his class or something like that. There's other quarterbacks. Some people have Michael Penix ahead of him. Some will have Bo Nix. I think Shador's returning back to school for sure. I'm telling you right now, I'm working on the 2025 class. He's probably going to be our quarterback one. Him or Penn State's quarterback right now. I'm leaning towards the number 1 overall, but Bo Nix kind of reminds me of Hendon Hooker. I think he's going to be the Hendon Hooker. I think he's going to be, maybe he'll be solid, but because of his age, he's probably going to be day 2 pick. Michael Penix is in he has a lot of talent around him at Washington. He has 3 wide receivers right now that are probably all going to be 1st, 2nd, 3rd round picks. Good offensive line. I've seen him. Maybe it's just because I remember how average and mid he looked like in Indiana. I lost a lot of bets on Indiana when he was the quarterback there. So maybe I'm holding that against him too much. But I think easily right now Quinn Ewers is quarterback 3 in this draft class. I think that would be an exciting pick for the Minnesota Vikings. Pick 6. We have the New York Jets, and we're going to have them get Fashanu. We're going to have them get Fashanu, the tackle from the Penn State Nittany Lions, 6'6", 320, has a 75 PFF grade. Dane Brugler from The Athletic, PFF has him as the number 1 tackle. Grades out exceptionally well. He's only 20 years old, very high ceiling. I think if you're New York Jets and you're getting Aaron Rodgers back, protecting Aaron Rodgers is your number 1 priority so that a season-ending injury does not happen again. And I think with this, you hope things keep working out with Mekhi Becton. You bring in Fashanu to upgrade over Dwayne Brown, who's a liability. You can move AVT back to guard. I believe he's playing a little bit of tackle right now, or there's an idea that he can move it to tackle. His best spot is at guard. I think protecting Aaron Rodgers right now at pick 6 is the layup. Speaking of tackles, I wrote down, I got kind of just my notes here. Almost every team picking the top 20 needs an offensive tackle, and there's only so many that I think have first-round grades. But the Patriots are another team that desperately needs an offensive tackle, and I'm going to have them get Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame, 6'8", 322 pounds, has an 85 PFF score right now. Just gigantic anchor tackle that is, you can play either spot there for the Patriots. I think the Patriots need to prioritize the offensive line. Could be the end of the Mac Jones era. Patriots seem like a team that might be, like a Kirk Cousins landing spot. Like maybe they'll go with a veteran route because there's just no quarterback worth getting right now at 7. And knowing that tackle is still a gigantic need for the team, it was a gigantic need for the Patriots last draft, I think that's a nice pick for them to make. We have the Bengals at 8. They somehow pick here at 8. I already know people are going to be screaming, get Brock Bowers, get Brock Bowers. No! You need to protect your freaking quarterback. I'm going to get Amarius Mims, the tackle from Georgia. 6'7", 340, has a 71 PFF score, Again, just very high ceiling offensive tackle. You got to figure out that offensive line. Lael Collins wasn't it. Who's the other guy? Jackson Carman wasn't it. You don't really know what you're doing with Jonah Williams. He's looking like he's not it. Amarius Mims, big-time player, doesn't give up sacks, gigantic human being. He could be the bodyguard. He could be the bodyguard that Joe Burrow so desperately needs so he can throw the football to Jamar Chase. Finally, that would be the only good news. If this season blows up in smoke because Burrow's injury, if you're the Bengals, likely you'll finish up with a draft spot where you can finally address the offensive line properly. Arizona at pick number 9. We're going to have them land Dallas Turner, pass rusher from Alabama. I think you can maybe make the argument maybe a slightly higher ceiling than Jarrett Verse. 6'4", 245 pounds, has 7.5 TFLs, 5.5 sacks this season in only 5 games. I think when you're the Arizona Cardinals, you got Gannon there. He's a defensive coach. You look at the tight end room, you got Trey McBride and Zach Ertz still there. It's tough to pass up on Brock Bowers, but I think a defensive coach, all things equal, sees a big-time edge rusher prospect. He's going to pull the trigger here because you pretty much, you traded out a Will Anderson Jr., you don't want to do that again. You don't want to pass up on another great Alabama edge rusher. So that's where we're going to go there for Arizona. And don't worry, we back up on the clock there at pick 13. We have the Giants at pick 10. And for the Giants, I think offensive line could make some sense. But I am going to have them get yourself a weapon. Get another weapon. It's tough to pass up on the O-line, but you go wide receiver here and then stock up on the O-line in the other rounds. We're going Keon Coleman. 6'4", 210 pounds. In 4 games this year for Florida State, Michigan State transfer, 250 yards, 6 touchdowns. Big time, man. And he looks, I don't want to say sneaky athletic. I think we always need to, we all know the trope right now where you apply sneaky athletic to a certain player. I think we got to start applying that to these big 6'4" jump ball guys. He looks like he's a ridiculous athlete. I know he's like a big-time basketball recruit as well, but he is passing the hype test. And I think if you are the New York Giants, another weapon for Daniel Jones needs to be as important as, say, the offensive line right now. And I think that Coleman, in terms of game changer, in terms of trying to salvage that contract that you gave out to Daniel Jones, you can't go wrong there. I mean, you could also go Brock Bowers because you haven't seen a lot out of Darren Waller, but just under the assumption that you make that trade for Waller, you're not going to give up on him after only 1 year. All things equal, bring in a wide receiver and gamble at Waller, can play at a high level. That was kind of the logic there a little bit. 11 for Green Bay. I'm going to have the Green Bay Packers select J.C. Latham, tackle from Alabama, 6'6", 335, has a 76 PFF grade. Versatile, I believe you can get a little bit of guard tackle versatility, but I actually kind of pulled Green Bay Packer fans on my Twitter, and it seemed like getting a Bakhtiari replacement. He's the best tackle available, a legitimate first-round tackle, and help protect Jordan Love for the foreseeable future. Pick 12, the free fall of Brock Bowers is over. I have the New Orleans Saints selecting Brock Bowers, tight end from the University of Georgia, 6'4", 230 through 5 games this year, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, the best tight end prospect since Kyle Pitts, and he's going to go to a situation that's going to be a lot more favorable than whatever the fuck Kyle Pitts has been dealing with in Atlanta. For the love of God, trade Kyle Pitts somewhere they're going to use him. Jonnu Smith's getting more targets. It's disgusting. It's despicable. Brock Bowers, kind of the same. But I mean, Brock Bowers to me, he plays like he's Cooper Kupp. Doesn't really play even though he's a tight end, he'll block and all that stuff. He goes to Georgia, but he's not really a prolific blocker. That was Darnell Washington's job when they were both there. And just watching him play, he reminds me of freaking Cooper Kupp with the Rams. So that is a big-time get there for the Saints. Don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, Michael Thomas, the availability, could always move on from him eventually. So, you get a little bit of, slot, tight end, big-time receiver there. And the Saints just go all in on the offense here to go in with Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, if you have Brock Bowers, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. That is trying to maximize what you have at quarterback in Derek Carr for sure. Arizona back on the clock at 13 after selecting Dallas Turner at 9. I'm going to have them go in the secondary and get another Alabama player, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Best name, first team all-name, corner out of Alabama, 6'1", has 19 pass breakups, I think 2 interceptions in the last 15 games, an 85 PFF score, so he's graded out very well by the football nerds. I think the Arizona Cardinals definitely need to continue to throw some assets in that secondary. Someone that is currently playing with the Arizona Cardinals in Madden, corner big-time need. We actually went corner in our first draft because, God bless Marco Wilson's shoe-throwing ass, and you got Keitrell Clark, who's providing some value for sure, and Garrett Williams, when he gets healthy, hopefully will be a nice little slot for you. But getting someone that can play on the outside, that is definitely McKinstry. I think he is a lock for the first corner selected. But we're going to have a little bit of run on corners because up next at 14, we have the Chargers, and I'm going to have them get Kalen King. They just traded J.C. Jackson back to the Patriots, so still trying to figure out that secondary. Kalen King, 5'11", 191, has 19 PBUs in the last 8 games. Not a super hot start this year for Penn State, but I think he has a lot of, he's kind of a higher floor corner, maybe not have the highest ceiling, but I see a player here that is very sticky in coverage, solid athlete, fluid mover, maybe not the great length that you like to look for on the outside, but I think he has more, like kind of like Devin Witherspoon in regards to like you don't need to be 6'2" anymore to for sure be. You can be 5'11" and scrappy with technique, and you can survive on the outside in the next level, and I think you get a lot of that out of Kalen King here from Penn State. Plus, it's Penn State players. I don't know. I don't have a true read on how athletically he's going to test. Usually, if you're a first-round Penn State player, you're going to test very, very well. You're going to be a freak of nature, so that'll be something to watch. We have Houston at pick 15. Kind of surprising right now. We're going to have them go to the defensive line to get Jerzon Newton, D lineman, kind of D tackle, 295. I think D'Amico could use him like an Armstead because, you can get some of these smaller D-tackles, or not smaller, Armstead's like 6'7", 6'8", but he's like 290, like these, in terms of weight, maybe not prototypical D tackles, I think will work in D'Amico Ryan's scheme. Jerzon Newton, 6'2", 295, has 17 TFLs, 7.5 sacks in the last 18 games. I think he's a big-time get there for the Texans, who definitely, I think, out of all the surprises, right? A lot of people in Houston was not really over-optimistic about their offense. Looking pretty freaking good. And their offensive line's not even healthy. And I think all things equal, I think going best D-line available for the Texans at 15 to continue to build something special with Will Anderson there and John Grenard is a good decision, good area to go. Washington at pick 16. I'm going to have them grab a tackle here in Graham Barton, the offensive tackle from Duke. That is going to be your Charles Leno replacement. He is 6'5", 315, has a 71 PFF grade, projected to go first round across the board. Kind of a technician. I believe he also has a lot of versatility. He can play guard, can play either tackle spot. But I think offensive line for the Commanders right now, commit to Sam Howell. I would love to see them commit to Sam Howell. I don't really know where the command. This was a tough pick. I just kind of de facto to one of my last first round grade offensive tackles. I only have one left. I won't tell you who it is. But, you just look at where's their arguably biggest weakness right now, and that is protecting Sam Howell. So I think going with the top tackle available for the Commanders, maybe not the sexiest pick, but it'll make it so Sam Howell has more time to throw it to your Jahan Dotsons and your Scary Terrys. Jacksonville at pick 17, and we're going to have them get themselves a pass rusher in Chop Robinson out of Penn State. 6'3", 250, 13 TFLs, 6.5 sacks in 17 games. They're trying to find pass rush. Javon Walker, you're not going to give up on him already, but Javon Walker is still a question mark. He's still developing. Caleb Von Asaw, whiffed on that pick. Josh Allen, can you afford to pay him? It's going to be a contract year. So there's a lot of cloudy, murkiness questions around the pass rush for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with that in mind, that's kind of why, and that's great value. I think Chop Robinson at 17, he could go much earlier, and that's kind of my logic, my reasoning. I'd love to hear what Jags fans think about that. Given the board, would you go maybe a wide receiver? There's still 2 really good wideouts here. Would you go a different direction? Let me know. Rams finally have a first-round pick. Holy shit, I literally can't remember the last time they had a pick. I'm going to have them go with Latu, it says linebacker. He's an edge rusher out of UCLA. Big-time production. 6'5", 265 pounds. Has a 92 PFF score. 20 TFLs, 14.5 sacks in his last 17 games. I think when you look at the Rams right now, not a lot of production from their edge rushers right now. It's still just heavily reliant on Aaron Donald, and I think getting an absolute bargain in Latu, getting a guy that kind of production that is grading out that well just before the 20th pick is exactly the kind of welcome back to the first round selection that the LA Rams need. Pick 19, we have the Atlanta Falcons, and I am going to go with J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback out of Michigan. I don't love this pick, but Desmond Ridder ain't it. And if you look at what makes Desmond Ridder desirable to Arthur Smith, I think there's a little bit of mobility to it. Like Desmond Ridder can move behind the pocket. And you're gambling on the upside. I think Arthur Smith is a coach offensively that's willing to develop a player. So that's exactly what you need with J.J. McCarthy. 6'3", 200 pounds. 79% completion percentage this year, 10 touchdowns, 3 picks. And I believe, I could be wrong, I've watched him play. He can scramble. He's a good athlete. I believe, though, he was the top dual threat quarterback in his class. Was a 5-star recruit. Now, I wish I could say to Falcon fans that, like, you know, this guy's going to make you better. I think there's a little bit of, like, a slow burn with McCarthy. Like, you probably are going to want to pair him with a veteran, or maybe just you have Ritter for another year and you let them battle it out. Because I don't think he's necessarily pro-ready. I think if you want to go with someone a little bit more pro-ready, my next quarterback would be Riley Leonard out of Duke, who is very good dual threat as well. But as it stands, I think McCarthy has upside, has very high ceiling, which is likely going to get him into the first round this year if he does declare. And Atlanta, Desmond Ritter ain't it. Desmond Ritter is not going to be your option. And get someone, for the love of God, that can use your weapons. You got Drake London, you got Bijan Robinson, you got Algier, you got Kyle Pitts. Someone. That should be an exciting can't-miss offense, but it's not. Find someone that can make it that. Maybe you got to change coaches. I don't know. Colts at pick 20. We're going to have them get Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU, the free fall style. I mean, that's outstanding value. Getting another weapon for Anthony Richardson and pair that with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. I think Pittman is in contract discussion soon, so if things go south there, wide receiver could become an even bigger need. But Malik Neighbors, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, has 625 yards, 5 touchdowns through 5 games this year. Big-time playmaker. Big-time first-round wide receiver all day of the week. And that'd be a good get to continue to help Anthony Richardson, who looks, as long as he can stay healthy, and I love to say that as a Gator fan, he looks like he's going to be an absolute monster. Pick 21, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm going to have them select Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson. So it feels like every year tackle is a big need for the Patriots. Feels like every year corner is a big need for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got Joey Porter Jr. last year. Let's continue to develop that secondary. 6'2", 185 pounds for Nate Wiggins, a 72 PFF grade, 2 picks, 15 PBUs in his last 17 games. Should test well. I think he's going to be a height, weight, speed type corner, and that would be a nice get there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But a lot of questions right now for the Steelers. I think most fans just want them to fire their offensive coordinator to see, if Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy. So that's why I don't really have them going quarterback here. I think you're at least going to bring in a new OC to see if he can rewire that offense and maximize and figure out how to get that offensive line going and Najee Harris going and maybe get more Jalen Warren and definitely George Pickens. So I think we will go on the defensive side of the ball and bring them a nice height, weight, speed DB. Tennessee at pick 22. And we're going to have them get Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. Another free fall value type pick. I think he's solid, but I think we're just seeing more wide receivers elevate ahead of him than it is him free falling. So still, fits the criteria of a first round wide receiver, 6'1", 200 pounds. Last 2 seasons, he has 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns in the last 17 games. So, maybe not, the most refined player, but he's a legitimate athlete. Was a return man there for Ohio State. And even though he is second fiddle to Marvin Harrison Jr., pretty much every wide receiver after Marvin Harrison would be wide receiver 2 to Marvin Harrison. It's just the nature of how freaking good the Ohio State wide receiver room is all the time. But if you're the Tennessee Titans, you just get another weapon there at wide receiver. You got Treylon Burks, still question mark there. I think someone like, just keep throwing enough assets at the wall and eventually something will stick. It's just, they could go tackle, but, is this whoever's going to be here better than, maybe going free agency to find Andre Dillard's not working out for you too much? So I would go Egbuka right now, BPA. But I'd love to hear, given this board, where would you go, Titan fans? Not necessarily I'm saying I'm in love with this pick. Open to hearing what you guys think. Seattle up next at 23. And we're going to have them get Mason Smith, defensive tackle from LSU. Gigantic human being, 6'6", 315, 6.5 TFLs, 4 sacks in his last 11 games with LSU. And I think most Seattle Seahawks fans know defensive tackle. The interior is their biggest area of need, and they're getting a legitimate first-round defensive tackle. Great value. They probably run that pickup to the board. 24, we have Dallas. And this one here, I'm going with my last first-round tackle, and that is Paul out of Houston. I think his brother plays for the Commanders or was drafted by the Commanders. Either way, Patrick Paul, 6'7", 315, has an 82 PFF score, and this is all about just replacing Tyron Smith. I think we've seen enough out of Tyler Smith to be like, keep him at guard. Keep him at guard, bring Paul in at left tackle, and just retool and rebuild that offensive line for Dallas. I think that is the top priority right now for the Dallas Cowboys. They could potentially go BPA, look at maybe a running back here if they don't plan to extend Tony Pollard. They could go Jatavian Sanders, get the next, a legitimate first-round weapon. They could go Xavier Worthy, Odunze. I don't know. I think offensive line and solidifying that offensive line just hasn't been able to stay healthy would be the most reasonable pick for Dallas at 24. Detroit up at pick 25, and I'm gonna have them get wisely. We think we all know why he's listed as a safety, not a corner. We'll go defensive back Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, 6'1", 207. He is a white corner. Needs to be said right now. He plays corner though. 105 tackles, 6 picks. 3 of those were pick sixes. 9 PBUs in his last 18 games for Iowa. I'll tell you right now, the first mock draft, I had him fall into the Eagles. I'd make that pick every day of the week. But I think for Detroit, you have CJ, serious injury, only on a 1-year deal. Manuel Mosley, a lot of guys in that secondary, even though they retooled it, aren't on long-term extensions. So I think the Lions will be looking for top corner DB available. I think DeJean would be an excellent, versatile player back there with Brian Branch for the foreseeable future. You also have Kirby Joseph. I think that's just best DB pick for Detroit. Miami at pick 26. I'm going to have them stay in-state and get Leonard Taylor, the defensive tackle out of Florida. He could be a defensive end. Classified maybe as a D lineman for their front. 6'3", 305, 11.5 TFLs, 4 sacks in the last 16 games. Also, a lot of people are expecting him to test pretty well. I think everything is going right offensively for Miami, but the defense, as we saw last week against Buffalo, is the area of concern. And I think you can make the argument Taylor is BPA for the Dolphins at where they need to get stronger at. Pick 27, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to have them stay on the defensive line as well and get Chris Jenkins, who's expected to test very, very well. Was like high on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He is 6'3", 305, 86 PFF score, 3 TFLs and a sack this year. Not prolific numbers, but I think he's a guy that you put on the other side of dude they just got out of Pitt, right? And then you have Hall, and it's not really developed. Really, Logan Hall's not really developed a whole lot. So Jenkins can kind of put up, and go on the other side. And I think just 2 freaks kind of lining up in the 2 defensive end spots with Vita Vea at nose tackle, kind of retooling the defense. But this is a tough pick for the Bucs just because their defense is still, I think, why they're 3-1 right now. It's been basically defensive playing like acceptable football. Baker Mayfield obviously still got Godwin and Mike Evans. I think ideally this would be another team that you look on the offensive line a little bit, but BPA for them might very well be going back to Todd Bowles' wheelhouse, which is the defensive side of the ball, and getting Jenkins in here. For Buffalo at pick 28, this is kind of a change of the guard pick. I'm having to get Cameron Kitchens, the safety from Miami. He's had a pretty bad injury, which you're on that fence of like, is he going to return to school so he can play a full season, or is he going to be like, injury was pretty scary. I might as well just go to the NFL where I'm still going to be a first-round pick right now. Which, we'll see what happens. But 6 feet tall, 205 pounds, 7 interceptions, 6 PBUs in his last 14 games. I think if you look at the safety room for the Bills, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, not getting any younger. There you go. This is kind of like a luxury pick for Buffalo in regard. There's no real tackle that could come in and be a big get. You could look at wide receiver, depending on how they view that room with Stephon Diggs. Feels like every offseason. Sounds like he's going to be leaving. And you got Gabe Davis and all this. But I think because you just went offense and getting Kincaid last year, maybe this is the year you start thinking a little bit about the defense. But we'd love to hear what you think. Would you go safety here if you're a Bills fan, or would you grab a wide receiver? Pick 29, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm going to have them grab a corner. We're going a little off the board here. We're going to have them get Josh Newton, the corner out of TCU. 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, has an 82 PFF score, one of the highest graded corners in the nation right now. 4 interceptions, 16 PBUs in his last 20 games for TCU. And I think right now adding depth to the secondary that just hasn't been able to stay healthy for the Baltimore Ravens would be the best use of pick 29, given the board as it stands right now. Pick 30, we have the San Francisco 49ers. And for the Niners, I'm going to have them go with Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington, because Brandon Ayuk's in a contract year. And after paying Bosa, something's going to have to eventually give. Yes, you have Brock Purdy on free money, but you have a lot of dead money from Trey Lance, right? So I think if you can't bring in Brandon Ayuk, you definitely need to keep the weapons out there for Brock Purdy to continue to be as efficient as he can. And Odunze, 6'3", 215, has 600 yards and 4 touchdowns through 5 games right now for Washington. They were just a ridiculous passing offense. But I think this pick here is made on the assumption that if Brandon Ayuk is dipping, going with the best wide receiver available, I think could make a lot of sense for the 49ers late in the first round. Kansas City at 31, probably thinking the same deal. I'm going to have to get Xavier Worthy, adding some more speed back to that wide receiver room. Got Rashay Rice last year, wasn't prolifically high pick, but there's some upside there. But you see Tony, just the lack of it. I think I think if I'm Mahomes, I'm telling them, get me some more reliable receivers here. Young guys that are going to be able to build, that are cheap, because obviously his contract's only going to take up more and more of the salary cap spot. So they're not going to be able to be getting this weapons that they're going to need to continue to stay on top through free agency, because they're not going to be able to pay for it. So I think getting weapons here in the first round, Xavier Worthy, 6'1", 170 pounds, 345 yards, 3 touchdowns through 5 games. And he is very fast. If you want to, I would be surprised out of all the wide receivers going in the first round if he is not the quickest. He's going to put up some pretty big-time numbers. I think just another weapon. The rich get richer for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then finish it up here at 32, my Eagles. Where do the Eagles need to get better? Honestly, this is a spot where, like, if there was a tackle that fell, that was an easy. I could see them just going, doing the classic Howie Roseman, right? You know, get our Lane Johnson successor, right? Or, you know, what do we got on the defensive line? Michael Hall, like, you know, if there was someone that was just too much value, and then you'll get Nazir Stackhouse, like, what Georgia Bulldogs are left? That's not even a joke. Javon Bullard at safety, Philly, we need safeties. I've seen some mock drafts have us get Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. He's looked legit the couple times I've seen him play, but I would be shocked if Philly goes safety in the first round. So kind of staying on brand with a player that I think offers some upside, we're going to go with JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. Finishing up the draft, I think former 5-star recruit, former number 1 overall player. That is something that Howie Roseman values. If you look back the last couple of drafts for the Eagles, we have a lot of guys that it almost feels like the tiebreaker on our big board was like, well, this guy was a 5-star recruit, or this guy was a 4-star recruit. Howie Roseman, an underrated aspect of him and his scouting is like he's getting these guys that were legitimate high school recruits. And I think that that's going to go in favor of Tuimoloau. 11.5 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, 2 picks in the last 17 games. Not ridiculous numbers, but I mean, sacks are down right now across all of college football. No one's prolific. I would be shocked to see someone get 15 sacks this year. So sacks are down. You can't really box score, but if you watch Ohio State, he's constantly in the backfield. Him and Sawyer look like real legitimate first-round prospects. Maybe some value here, but I mean, like, kind of going off the checklist of what Howie Roseman looks like, right? 5-star recruit, check. A lot of underrated stats, like pressures and stuff like that, not necessarily sacks and TFLs, check. Premier school, right? I think Howie Roseman's now evolved to, like, we're only getting players from, obviously, the Georgia means, but like Georgia, Alabama. Like, if you don't consistently make the playoffs, college football playoffs, like, Howie Roseman's not really buying your players. So check mark, Ohio State, big-time school. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, not a lot of needs right now. I think you can make the argument we need a safety. Could use corner depth at this point. The value's not necessarily there. I think going edge rusher, right? We got Hassan Riddick. Seems pretty unhappy about his contract. So Brandon Graham likely going to retire. And we like having that depth. We like having that rotation. So yeah, we got Nolan Smith. Yeah, we still got Josh Sweat. But after that, a little bit of a drop-off. We're not having that exact same depth as one says. Well, I'd like to assume that Hassan Riddick's going to be happy to stay here for the... But little, you know, we always like to have depth. Maybe it's not the biggest need for the Philadelphia Eagles, but this is a Howie Roseman pick, and the value at 32, getting a 5-star recruit who's very legit. I think that's just too much value for the Eagles to pass up on. So there you go, fellas. That is a way too early 2024 NFL mock draft through the first month of the season. Would love to hear what you think about your team. I think I did a hell of a job. Maybe a couple teams I wasn't in love with the pick, but I think I could justify it enough as why I made it. But I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. That will do it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's your boy C4 today. Peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.